That if you didn't leave, your father and you and the boys, you'd be left full of lead.
Oh, I was left.
Collins give you his word to get out.
Left deals at this time.
Oh, aye, this is the time when these were.
Oh, when I was ordered to return.
It must have been 19 and 22 then.
22 would say that.
It was 22.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the way had all the legislation about the mill race and the compensation and damage to the road and all had been finished.
Mm-hmm.
So you and your father and Dermot and Eamon and Fonzie.
Fonzie was already teaching it.
And
up in this heart of Derry.
Oh, was they?
They didn't seem to, as far as the authorities were concerned, they had no connection with us.
I see, it's wonder they didn't with a name like that.
No, but he quit one day in a hurry when 2 corpses were found.
Yes.
In the hedge opposite his house.
Yes.
2 of the local boys.
Yes.
To see. And he had luckily been away somewhere for overnight.
Yes, I know. Otherwise he might have been
Otherwise,
shot.
there was a local grocer man.
Yes.
Who was, he was keeping in with authority.
I know, yeah.
But he served Fonzie's house with groceries.
Yes.
Like them as a customer.
Uh-huh.
And once he appeared on the scene, and wherever he was coming back on the bicycle.
Yeah.
At 9 o'clock in the morning, you know.
Yes, I know.
Or maybe 8 in the morning, he had to go to school.
Yeah.
He and the grocer called him.
Uh-huh.
Which wasn't odd, you know.
Yes, I know.
That he thought.
Yeah.
As well, we stayed away from home for a while.
Yes, yes.
They,
this grocer told him.
Grocer.
Yes, the grocer was in the know.
He was in
with
the
the
know.
British third.
That was the point.
Yes.
And he said they left a little memento for you to see.
Uh-huh.
Those boys belonged to naming a place somewhere away over the hills. They had been carried in a lorry, dead bodies, you see.
By the towns and left there.
I left there, you see. Much to say that's...
This is for you.
Now, apparently at the time, must have thought he had already gone.
Yes.
Do you see? They must have thought that.
Yes.
Because the normal thing is that they really wanted him. They would have waited to the early morning till he did come.
I know.
So he came down and he got a job in Meath.
Yes.
For a while. And then he moved back to Dublin.
Yes. So you and your father and Eamon and Dermot went on.
I went on.
Dublin.
Well, I didn't go on. I was in Dublin.
Oh, you were in Dublin, of course.
I was told in Dublin.
Well, and how did you get word up to your father?
Well, they hadn't have to get word up to him. They got the word up at home from
some in
a nose bag.
From
the RIC.
Oh, your father was ordered by the RIC to go?
Yes, I.
Yes, but you told me that Collins had told you that if you boys didn't go, they would get shot.
I went back.
Oh, if you went back?
He sent me to tell me not to go back north.
Oh, I see. Otherwise you'd be filled with lead.
That was just the nice expression he used. And he wouldn't have known. But my brothers were...
No, he wouldn't. No.
But I was only referring to myself.
Oh, I see.
I was went back, continuing, you see.
Well, you met Collins a whole lot of times that time, didn't you?
I mean, he was in the Supreme Council with me.
Did you like Collins? I think Collins was a nice person, was he?
He was, but he had a bit of a boisterous manner.
Yes.
But you knew him.
Yes.
And the funny thing is that he stood up to him.
Uh-huh. You could call him.
And not so much call him, you brought him down to a level where he would talk reasonably. You know?
Yeah.
But the point is, it was hard to blame him. He was a bit domineering.
Yeah, I know.
He held the strings of everything in his hand.
I know,
And he was a fearless warrior, so that's a concern.
That's true, yes.
And he was like you in regard to memory. He remembered men up and down the front. You'd have this sort of thing, you see, a big list of making it, say, Cork men. He's all right. NBG.
No bloody good.
No, a loser. You know.
What do you mean by a loser?
Loser.
A loser, aye.
No, that's a southern one for it. No good of it.
I see, yeah.
Loser. I don't know what it has anything to do with louses or lists.
Now, I see. Well then, you came on then and you got a house, I remember you telling me at Sutton, I think it was.
Aye. A bungalow there.
I know. Well then your mother meanwhile was left with the girls up in Dunedin.
Aye, in the cottage.
And 4 RAC or specials or towns or something were sent to guard there.
Aye, guard day, like it was 2 per day and 2 per night.
Exactly, the guard, some of you can come back, I suppose.
No, I don't think.
Well, were they like threatened also?
I think at the end that they had, they weren't worried about protecting our women.
Indeed, they would not be.
But it's pretending that they were needed there to save our women folk. Do you see?
From the neighbours.
From the neighbours.
Oh, yes.
And that they would better go where their men folk were.
Yes.
And they said no neighbour had threatened them.
Yes.
And they would stay where they were.
Yes.
And then they came out, you see. They were coming in a sympathetic way for us. We want to save you from being injured.
Mm.
But then when they wanted to be injured, they wouldn't let them be injured. They told them to.
That's what I stand for.
They would give them, they estimated that 3 weeks would give them time to read up.
Yes.
The things about that, they say. That was the time I had to hunt and get a house.
I know.
Mm. We might have been getting one yet only for the Flanagans who got us the bungalow we got.
Well, that was a difficult assignment in the midst of the whole turmoil below and down in Dublin.
And afterwards I thought of the taking part in the Civil War.
Yes.
Where are I out of the last war?
Pardon?
Where are we? I said out of the last war.
Oh, we haven't reached the first war yet.
No, we have reached the point. I'm saying to myself.
Oh, I thought it was where are we?
No. When the women folk were chased and nobody to say boo to those who chased them.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yes,
yeah. And they decided, well, there's no good me taking part in that Civil War down here in Dublin.
No, it's the war up there.
The war
want
up
to
there,
continue there.
Couldn't get. But that's how we all came.
Uh-huh.
And then
they withdrew the guard, of course. They threatened to withdraw your mother says, surely I've never sent for you.
No, they kept the guard on there for the 3 weeks.
Did they?
And then withdrew it, you see.
Yes.
And then I think Granny and them got the wind up. I would say, I'm making this bit, I think they got the wind up and said, there might be something because remember the 2 tops I told you about? They lived over the field.
Yes, the 2 men.
And there was other areas around that, as you know where
I know where they were.
Petty Top Kay over by Ballyminin. Right
yes,
there.
indeed.
They did think of the possibility of
being burned in their beds,
and decided anyhow to come.
Oh.
I could tell you on this reason, I think you were there, Mum, at the time, that Mrs. Grace read the cups.
Oh, yes.
You don't believe in cup reading, do you?
Oh, well, I mean, I laugh at it, but there you were.
That's what I did.
That's what you used to do.
I happened to be at home at this time. It was now about a year before the time, so maybe 6 or 8 months.
Before the time we speak about it.
Before we moved.
Yes.
Of course, we knew we were there for life to see.
But you know, was it not great temerity on your part to come near home?
And I had to come from time to time, you see.
I know.
Because I was seen many times and no interference. What do you want? What's your name? Where are you going? You see, it's a good vibe because, I mean, the fact that I was working with volunteers like that or doing insurance.
I know.
Most cases they didn't see me at all.
Yes, but you weren't long out of Lincoln prison at this time.
Oh no, I just see.
See, I speak about the time you were arrested in 1918 and were in prison in Lincoln.
Up to 19, Christmas of 18 and a while of 19.
Yes. Then De Valera escaped when?
Somewhere in 18.
Then did you get serving mass then by yourself?
Oh, I had a
You were only assistant mass
I was only assistant to him, you see. And,
ostensibly assistant.
Oh, ostensibly, yes.
You're a cover man.
I was a cover man, you see.
To get
my sole job was to learn
yes.
under the auspices of the priest.
Yes, I know.
How to do and what to do and when.
I know, yes.
But to let him see or hear death sitting over they were watching to see that I was doing things right.
Dave was really the altar boy, wasn't he?
He was the one and only.
I see.
And that's the first I heard of the possible escape.
Yes.
And they had been planning 3 or 4 of them on their own.
Yes.
And they said, as he said, the less knew about it, the better. Just
I know, yes.
so
A
many
good
chances
precaution.
of them not going and not informing, but talking maybe and
Yes, I know.
an ear listening to them.
Yes.
Dave and Sean McGarry.
Yeah.
Sean was then chief centre, or chairman, if you like, or president. That's not, none of those is the right number, of the Supreme Council.
Yes.
He was the head.
Right. But Collins was imprisoned.
No.
Was Collins not the
there.
chief centre?
No.
Oh, I see.
He was secretary or treasurer.
Oh, of ARB.
Aye.
Oh, I see.
All the man was that.
Ah.
No.
I'm interfering you there in the course.
Very good.
But then but there was only a few.
They came to me, DC, and myself, the two of them, Dave and he, to tell me what the plan was.
Yeah.
I didn't know what they wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And that was, first of all, to be an altar boy.
Yes.
And then having had agreed to that I was to cover up, they told me the priest's keys were master keys.
Ah.
Master keys, you
Yes.
see. And the Dave had been trained by the 4th man who knew it, who knew about the escape, was Padre de Lockery.
Yes.
Then mayor of
Kilkenny, yes.
And he was in a big hardware place.
Yes.
And knew all about locks and things of the kind, you see. And he instructed Dave how to take impressions and so on.
Yes.
But when you take an impression of a key, you have to take it to the side and back and point.
I see, yes. Ah.
You know, and
I know
back
that.
and
All parts.
Aye. Well, Dave was trained to do that.
Yes.
And then the idea is he had noticed, you see, and this was the beginning of it. He had noticed when the priest came in, he left the keys in one place every day on a wee table near the altar.
Near the altar. Did he vest on the altar?
We vest on the altar. And,
yes.
And then the altar stone and all had to be taken out.
I see.
Covered and put up.
Ah.
Do you see? And all because the same altar was used for Presbyterian.
Oh, it was, of course.
Church of Ireland or England.
Ah, yes.
Service. And therefore, having noticed that disease, we could do something about that.
Yes, I see.
And then
he always left them on this altar.
He always left in the one spot. See? And that then was, Dave was to come with me on the agreed morning. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure that we had a couple of practices.
Yes.
Coming in and doing nothing with them.
I know.
Changing them out of their place.
I know.
To see if he noticed they were moved.
Yes, I see, yes.
And apparently he didn't notice them moved any time. So I was agreed, well, if we didn't notice them any time, we might notice the next time.
Yes. Well, how was Dave to get this impression of them?
Who was it to get
How in what manner was it to get the
He
impression?
used to get the priest's bunch of keys.
Yes.
And sit over yonder, as it were.
Yes.
They get wax and all prepared.
Oh, there was some candle wax.
Oh, yes, that was prepared. He had a bit of good, pretty good wax too. That was ordinary wax out of a candle. Got in the place.
I know.
But it was certainly wasn't candle grease, you know.
No, it wasn't. It was probably wax.
And he had been trained. May only spent 2 or 3 minutes taking the impressions.
I see.
But if he did, they weren't right. It would take him another time. He was in a hurry and possibly a wee bit nervous.
I know.
No, he wasn't going to be shot for doing.
No, I
He
know.
was nervous of failing.
I know.
During it, this was the final attempt. I remember that. During it, I was like, understand that the priest wanted to move next that way at all. I had always instructed you what
to go between them.
Get between him and draw his attention and push him if necessary to show you about that thing. What's that there? You know.
During the Mass?
Not during the Mass, no.
No.
During the Mass, the crowd was there, warders and all.
Of course.
This was in the wee empty room where just beside the altar, do you see?
I see.
And I was carrying the stuff out, and then And
Oh,
he
I
was
see.
vesting, and I was helping him to vest.
I see.
And literally standing in his way,
I know.
settling things. You see.
Well, you said, but Dave was sitting over there. Was
He
Dave
was sitting over there on a wee gallery, like to me it's sort of kind of 2 or 3 steps.
Yes.
See, and he had the keys and a cloth. The cloth was to deaden sound, you know.
I see.
And somewhere in the middle of it, I heard a clink.
Uh-huh.
And it was like your bell ringing,
Aye.
but it was only wee.
You only a tiny clink, but it
Oh,
sounded
tiny
ominous.
clink, but oh boy, it took me on my time to not look back, you know. Afterwards, we're all over there. Asked me, did you notice? I said, aye, it was like Big Ben.
Aye, I know it.
Well, to see, he didn't look around.
Uh-huh.
See, I couldn't look at the priest.
Now, I haven't got this thing straight yet, because, you see, the priest would come in from the outside world through with his key into the prison chapel, which was the common chapel for all denominations. And near the altar, usually prison chapels are semicircular, aren't they?
There are, yes, there is.
And there's high raised galleries all around. Was Dave a prisoner while he sat in the place you speak of, or was he waiting to serve Mass?
Oh, he was a prisoner.
I know, but was he waiting to serve Mass?
Was he willing to serve?
Waiting. Was he waiting in this? Where was he? When a priest would come to serve Mass, the altar boy would already be in the room, wouldn't he? Well, who would have brought him to that room?
Who brought the priest?
No, De Valera to the room.
Oh,
Was he there before?
A warder. Brought him and handed him in. You see,
Yes.
once he was in there, he was locked in.
I know.
You mean, they were all locked
Oh, you were still in the prison, of course. Well, then you also were. How long had you been acting as assistant altar boy?
Well, maybe about 3 weeks.
I see.
Just like to show myself.
I know.
As it were, that they were accepted by the priest as an altar
See,
boy, you know. That there was 2 altar
Did the
boys.
authorities not wonder at 2 altar boys being?
No, because I suppose they learned it many a time they knew that there would be a dozen altar boys.
I see.
You see, and
Well, then in this room he would come dressed in civilian garb.
the priest would
The
come
priest would and
priest,
leave his
yeah.
keys down on this little bench
Aye.
in the vesting room.
And then, about I can recall, like there was no door, you know, leading into the vestry,
Into the corridors, right?
into the corridor, or even into the altar.
No.
No, you could have stood there like in the front of the altar, right sitting in the cloth, and looked in
Yes.
to the room. Do you see?
Yes, yes.
It's vague to me now. All I know is that I was a few times out practicing serving Mass. And I tell you, I had to learn it. First of all,
Oh, I know, yes.
I know the Latin and all, so from me now. And then having not so much that I learned to serve Mass as the priest got accustomed to too.
I see.
And
Yeah.
then having 2 there, Dave did stay with the first 2 or 3 times
Yeah.
to see if the Mass was properly served. you
Yes,
see.
and then
And then he decided to stay up.
yes, but
To
that's
see.
part and parcel of the
And
plan.
he, part and parcel of that. But he didn't do anything for the first 2 or 3 times.
I know.
He just getting used to me serving instead of him.
But on the morning in question, the 2 of you were in this vesting room,
Yes,
and the priest was vesting on a bench, presumably.
yes. A lovely one.
Something like that. And on this bench were sitting the keys.
Not immediately beside him.
Huh?
I can recall that they were like over there somewhere.
Yes.
And he was vesting here.
Yes,
You see?
I see.
And that kind of the side of the altar was there, and the desk or form,
Go on.
or whatever it was, down a foot or 2.
Uh-huh.
You know, just like a small table sitting
Oh, I
beside
see.
the altar. So that he looked over there,
Yeah.
well, he saw the end of the altar, but
Yes,
he wouldn't
but-
see his keys.
And you were in
Really,
between him and that point.
I was in between him.
Ah,
I was on the corner of the altar,
I know.
footing,
I know.
as I told you,
By a
near where
prearranged
the
plan.
keys were. Oh, yes. Oh, we went over it a whole lot of times.
And Dave was to put this wax on top of the keys that were sitting there. Was it?
Yes.
Or was to impress them?
He was to impress. No, he was taking the principal thing was his master key.
Yes, I know.
Do you see? Because the priest couldn't be held up at every door. He had
No,
a
I
master
know.
key.
Yes,
that's
yes.
what.
Ah,
And Dave had to take an impression of the key sitting that way.
yes.
Say the point of the
I
key
know,
there.
yes, yeah,
And then the same key sitting and another
I
bit
know,
of-
yes. And to,
there.
ah,
and then to take the key and put it that way.
to get the
Put the
breadth,
round,
the
you see.
diameter of it.
Aye. And then some, I suppose maybe there was the hand, he had no number, hey. We tried it on a couple of occasions, you know, and whether or not it's to have one, if one got lost, he had another.
Yes.
Well, he came back, and they were trying one night. There was great excitement. There was a door that led out from one part of the corridor into a smaller corridor that led out into the yard.
Yes.
And there was a gate there, big iron gate,
yes,
inside, and outside that a door.
Yes.
See, and the master key opened the gate.
Yes.
When I went to try it in the door,
That's true.
no, stuck.
Dear, oh.
They weren't going this time.
Only a
They were only
preliminary.
practicing to and that held up everything.
Good.
They patted the look, they tried to get it scraped down with pen needle things. We hadn't got the fail idea.
No.
Hadn't reached, as they see.
Yes.
And he tried but failed. He tried about a week. And all the time, 2 or 3 times, that was a joke. A warder just appeared from nowhere because it comes around bends.
I know.
And the first time, the key was stuck and I couldn't get out. And he walked past it and didn't see it stuck on.
That'd be a tent, wouldn't be a very large key, of course.
Oh, it was
Like the key of a back door of a house, like that.
that's sort of a thing.
That's right.
Only a wee bit heavier.
I know, a very big key.
And there it was sticking out of the lock and he didn't see it.
Dear, oh.
He was just
Entirely unobserved.
look at the draw. And
Well, they got it out.
they got it out, generally. He had quite a trouble, but he got it out, you see.
Well, how did they get back into the corridors again? Because it was not the same key that had got them to the corridors.
I have no, they hadn't got into that other place. The second place, they hadn't got through this door.
Oh, I
They got
see.
through the gate, which was already open. I mean, they had it open.
I know.
And they would go back through it, you see.
Oh, I see.
This gate and I'm telling you, it stuck. It was only about from here to the wall.
Oh, from the
I
inside of the
was
prison
expecting
somewhere.
some outer thing, whatever.
Oh, I
was
know.
on. They had a gate like, and
I
then
know.
a couple of yards, and then a door.
I see.
Mm.
Well, then, De Villiers got the impression by putting this wax on the key. And what was the cloth you spoke about? He had a cloth.
Oh, he had a piece of cloth.
Yeah.
Just like if he was moving the keys,
Ah.
it was on the cloth.
To deaden
It
it.
was as if he had had that on a desk
Ah.
and went to flatten that
Oh,
out
to make a noise.
and a bit of noise, you see.
Of course.
And a bit of cloth was just
To smooth the keys back over on
Aye,
it.
to
So that when he impressed on it,
Mm.
wouldn't clink too
Aye,
much.
the others wouldn't clink.
I know.
See, if he had the key sitting down there
Aye.
and pressed on, it would make no sound. But
No.
these other fellas here.
Oh, I know they would. They weren't
see?
dangling, yeah.
Mm.
So that was how the key was made.
That's how the key was made. But it was made then in neither Dublin nor Kilkenny.
I
But
know.
went through, one of the,
Keep in on the
they might
case.
have cost something, or caught on something, in fact, that the letters were sent to Paddy de Lockery's place.
Yes.
Do you see?
Uh-huh.
I mean, if they put two and two together, maybe they just didn't know it. He was a master of general store. you
Yes,
know.
I know that hardware
A
store.
hardware store, you
Ah.
see, they may have put two and two together. But that was at the time you were speaking of about a key sticking was, and now the outside gate entirely. There was ordinary walls round, small walls dividing yard from yard, you
yes,
see.
yes.
And they had to pass through 2 doors,
Uh-huh.
one gate here, and then
Yeah.
out at the front, a big door surmounted by a gate.
Yes.
And they got the gate opened, which is opened that way. And then they went to the door and the men were outside.
Yes.
And they put the key in to turn that. And it broke.
Dear, oh.
And here they were with you see, they'd locked the gates behind them.
Yes, that's what I was at.
That was a joke.
They'd
That was to
locked
put
them.
them off the scent.
Aye, I know.
Do you see, if they locked the gates,
Yes, they
it
went
left
out.
the prison authorities and the G-men generally no indication as to how that got there.
No.
Now when they were stuck, you see, and the whole thing, it was, I don't know who of them it was, suggested the possibility the bar then mightn't have turned.
Yes.
because the other side had a key.
Right side. People.
You see?
Right side party.
But they couldn't get it in.
Mm-hmm.
So it was either sticking out a wee bit, or by the grace of God, it hadn't turned.
Yes.
But they were able to get, I suppose, a pencil or something they used.
I know.
And gradually tapped
Push it
got
back
again, do you see? And then open from the outside.
Very courageous people
Oh, aye,
to do all this. But what time in the morning would this have been?
It wasn't in the morning.
No, it was nighttime.
It was about
Did you tell Father to show him right?
7 or 8.
Sean
7 or 8 in the evening.
Ah, that's all right. We'll get that in a minute.
Oh, yeah,
Well.
no, there's not. The,
Which maybe heard of it.
The what?
I don't
Well, it doesn't matter about that. Well,
It
what
was
about
Seamus
Sean
was
Muller?
to come.
Yes.
oh, I,
Instead of Sean Muller.
Oh, is that so?
Well, that part of it.
I but it means that Sean was one of the leading men.
Yes.
Like from Sinn Féin viewpoint, and IRA viewpoint.
Yes.
And he was very, there was nobody ever explained it to me. There was the 1918 elections, wasn't it?
Yes, it would be.
There was big elections in 18, that's right.
There was. Mulroy's up for Tyrone.
That time, well then it mustn't be those. Must have been other ones. Because even me, I was put up as a candidate in Belfast
Yes.
against the biggest Orangeman in it.
Yes.
Got 303 votes and he got 30,000.
Yeah.
The idea was to put some candidate
I
in
know,
every
just-
constituency,
Yes.
no matter what cost. And John was one of the most obvious choices for a Dublin place, you see,
I know.
because he had been there before.
Yes.
And by some chance,
Uh-huh.
nobody could find it in the cheers. John's name didn't come in.
Sean
Because
Muller.
part of the thing was put them in to get them out, you know,
Yes,
But
I
then
know. I remember.
to the
Yes.
Dáil, or
Yes.
the British
Yes.
Parliament then,
Yes.
and get them out of jail.
Yes.
And Sean's name wasn't none.
And
They
where?
made us in as a candidate.
Candidate. Ah.
You see, you might as well have made left out Arthur Griffith.
Yes, in the
See.
estimation of all.
Of course,
Okay.
aye. And whether or not there was some wee things that we, or some of us anyhow, didn't know about, there might have been some wee wheels within the wheel,
Yes.
some outfall in Dublin, or some jealousy in Dublin or something,
Yes.
against Sean this year.
Yes.
They had won.
Uh-huh.
But patently, Sean reached the stage when he was completely in the dumps.
Mm-hmm.
And the verge of a breakdown
In the prison.
in the prison.
Ah.
So it was decided, Big Jack O'Mahony came to me and said if I didn't mind it, I thought better to have Mulroy
Yeah.
under the circumstances.
Uh-huh.
See, and I certainly agreed, you see.
Yeah.
And he said we could send forward, but then they haven't made arrangements for it.
No, for the
See,
text. Excuse me,
and
I think
I
somebody
said-
knocking at the door. And the back. You down there, son, I think you are.
It's only within 5 minutes.
I had enough, but I thought, I nearly bent. You'd let him know that you were. Wasn't it you? Was to go on Dean.
But which,
Wasn't it you was to go with Dan? Wasn't it you was to go with Dan? I just think
Sorry for interrupting.
No,
So, Big Jack O'Mahony came to you and said that you wouldn't mind.
and I said, under circumstances, it wasn't particular, because I tell you, I see the way I felt about it was, they would go out and be in the run in England for a while and then be caught.
Yes, that's
No,
the feeling you had,
There
huh?
didn't seem to be any sense in going.
No, I know.
Do you see? And none of us were aware, because they decided that this was not only be kept dark from the British authorities, but by her own,
Yes, I know.
because somebody was spilling the beans.
Yes.
And they went to the extent of there were 2 other escapes, while it was months and months were passing for hours, you see.
Yes, I know.
There were 2 other escapes and they both failed.
I see.
And we talked luridly to the
Ah.
warriors and soldiers about the bloody idiots
Aye.
in there.
The idea of
At
that.
this time we were getting parcels and so on from home.
Yes.
You know, and therefore we were getting fit and the conditions were good.
Yeah.
And we had no work to do, you see. We pretended, you know, what do we want home for?
Yes.
And anyhow,
This was to put them off the
put
scent.
them that we wouldn't dream of it.
Well, the other failed ones, were you in the know of them? Those
No, it was only, we weren't. We
No.
didn't know, you see. But we decided that none of them anyhow would know.
No yours.
Because we didn't know what way things were.
There's only a few nearby yours.
But there was one warder there, a few of the warders had reached the state, and so the soldiers too. When they found out that there was no Germans in the plot,
Yes.
they felt very much annoyed because they had treated us as arch enemies.
I know.
Because we were in league, you can
With the
understand
Germans.
that.
With the Germans.
With the Germans, you
That's
see.
what this.
And you couldn't have done worse than.
No, I know.
them.
Oh, they
But
treated
when
us.
they found out, we demanded a public trial and so on.
Yes.
But the British government wouldn't have a trial.
No.
And then it came out because they couldn't, there was nothing to prove.
No, I know.
Now the warders and others who were sitting on us, as it were,
Yes.
as enemies now turned in the other way.
Yeah.
But there was one called, a nickname I didn't know, Bertie. He must have been that Bertie type, you know.
Yes.
But
But Burlington Bertie.
he kept still the attitude of a superior warder.
Oh, yeah.
No, the boys were looked with contempt at him.
Yeah.
But he's a good man for trying to orgy about, they see, and the superiors were about.
Yes,
See,
I know.
But we didn't need superiors or anybody else. But Sean McGarry, and it happened about 3 or 4 nights before his escape.
Yes.
See, it was apropos of some other escape. It was a attempt.
Yes.
And who did he tackle but Bertie?
Yes.
And Bertie pointed out that you prisoners might think it was easy to escape, but our security measures are so and so, what do you see?
Yes.
And Sean says to him, "Hey, Bertie," says he, "Well, what did you do now? Throw me up on top of that wall, that outside wall over there."
Yes.
I ignored where it was, a big high wall, about 30
Yes.
feet high. More, see, it was Gary, you wouldn't be long there till you get a bullet in the arm. Do you see?
Yeah.
That ended the conversation. Sean, I don't want it there, so see, wherever you get it. But then that was a joke, you see, the day after his escape.
Yes.
He should be the one that Bertie was going to
Yes.
see to it,
Yes,
you
so
see.
I know.
And now Big Jack O'Mahony, who was there, who had a great sense of humour, his first thing the following morning was to ferret out Bertie.
Yes.
Hey, me Bertie?
Aye.
Sean was a great big man, he talked down and
Aye.
Bertie come. What about that bullet in McGarry's arm? Boys, he got a look, only Big Jack was too big.
He couldn't even, could have killed him.
It was very sore, very sore.
I see.
And then they started and told all the warders.
I know.
They started on him too.
I see. But Jack O'Mahony was helping to plan it from inside, but wasn't going to go away himself. He wasn't going to escape.
No, I said he was. Big Jack was in a grand position. Traveller always late. 40, 50 years of traveller. And he knew every inch of the country.
Yes.
They were debating like what would go here, what had happened there. Jack was a topographer or geographer.
Oh, Britain. Was he a commercial traveller in Britain?
I had, no, not so much in Britain, but I had travelled a lot of Britain.
I knew, I see.
But it was the same as if you were going down somewhere about Clare that you'd never been.
I know, been
But
near the
you
place.
may as well be in Arizona.
That's
you
true,
see.
yeah.
But, I think that's nearly what about that.
Yeah, but who did eventually escape? Sean Mulroy,
Sean Mulroy and
Dee Valera,
and Sean McGarry.
Sean McGarry.
Aye. It was sure the one I told you about, where the town did give him the kick in the pants.
What's
Sean
that?
was the first of the trio to get back to Ireland.
Oh, yes, and
And not only back to Ireland, but back to Dublin.
yeah.
You see? And the British authorities got word that McGarry was not only in Ireland, but in Dublin.
Dublin,
And the hue and cry went out, you see.
yes.
All the soldiers and all the towns and all the
Oh,
policemen
yes.
get him because it was been a famous victory. They
Yes,
thought.
I know.
And it was a famous victory for our side because they didn't get him.
I know.
And this time John he knocked about in the ordinary way, you see.
Yes.
Because he had scouts and all watching. But he got that tram, no buses.
Yes.
But the pillar.
I say yes.
Coming up our way up because Navan
Yes.
direction. And he got as far as Parnell's monument.
Yes, not very far.
Not very far. When the tram was stopping a bunch of towns raided DC. And they were headed by a big town about 6'3", a fine big hefty brute. And John had wisely enough not been upstairs where men usually go.
Yes, I know.
He was in amongst the women.
Yeah.
And as soon as it stopped, he decided it was his place to get off.
Yes, very sensitive there.
He went down like amongst the towns.
Yes.
He was caught by this big fella. Where are you going? I'm getting down here, you see. What's your name? And John leered, you know. I'm John McGarry.
Yes.
Oh, are you, John McGarry?
And
he got it. John says he'll never forget the good shot the fellow was. The one kicks us in, he landed me about 5 yards across the street.
Yeah. Trying to pull our legs
Pull
out.
our legs, you see.
So Sean got away.
John got away.
And Sean Monroy, was he ever captured then?
No, none of them were captured.
No.
Sean got up to Scotland way, and as far as I remember, don't recall right, and got across to Belfast. That's a vague recollection of that.
Well, it was a great rejoicing in the prison amongst you people.
Was. But I nearly got a shot over it, trying to be funny myself.
In the prison?
Aye.
How was that, James?
Well, I was, told you, boxing and wrestling.
Yes, I remember how you were wrestling the Dave, put Dave's neck.
Aye, but that wasn't, this was now the night, the evening of the day they were going.
Yes.
And Dave Gillett was on and a couple of scouts like Milroy and McGarry themselves out watching that no warder would get near.
Yes, I know.
And Dave told us most formal way.
Yes.
He said, boys, I just wanted to tell you, 3 of us are going tonight.
Yes.
Sorry, believe me. I told them a surprise at that.
Yes, I know.
I hadn't heard any preparation or anything. Just we're going tonight. And then he told them what they were to do.
Yeah.
And asked for some suggestions. His idea was to just carry on that night after we left.
Yes.
He would leave about 6 in the evening.
Yes, I know.
And met on, we used to have classes and things of the kind.
I know, yes.
Certain amount of recreation, but we have a class in Irish and Greek and various other things. He said the best thing to put them off the scent that anybody was missing was to carry on as we go.
I know, I'm away.
And then I put it in and I said, couldn't we do it a wee bit more if we resisted letting hold ourselves and some any you might be in.
Yes.
You see, and therefore they would not think that we were just locking ourselves in.
Yes, I know. You were at liberty to go to your cell.
Oh, aye, and any time. The cell was open all day.
I see. And you could go going and out if you
like. Going
like.
out at any time you wanted, you see. And Dave said, no, we're not doing it. I know what's wrong with you, see. You want to get beaten up by warders, and you're not going to get hurt.
Yes. So acting on his suggestion, it just went on normally.
It went on normally. And amongst other things, it was rather good. There was one part in the room we were in, the so-called recreation room. There was a great big window like at that end.
Yeah.
And the big table was along there too.
Yeah.
A great big, like, not a normal table, a big one, trestles and so on.
I know.
Was there. And the light was there, shining out there through that window.
Yes, I know.
And they had to go along that pathway.
Oh dear, oh, aye.
There was a stream of light going down a good bit.
Yes.
And there was no other way about it but that.
No, you have to pass on to this being the light.
But it was some genius, I don't know, one of the boys. He said, we can settle that by getting, you can't see this board right sitting on the floor, but you see it better sitting up on the table.
Yes, indeed.
We had been supplied with a blackboard.
I know, yes.
But I suppose all our prisoners are the same. The things for study were there.
Yes.
And that prevented that light from going out at all.
Sure, of course it did.
The fellow up on the table busy talking out loud and explaining things out loud.
Yes, I know.
German or Dutch or French or
I know.
Italian. And that was Now it came to closing time,
Yes.
9 o'clock.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
and that time a bell went.
Yeah.
We were supposed to have the rosy note said, and then you marched quietly to yourself. But there was always a bit of a delay. You had to have your pot.
Yes. Yeah.
You had to get the water in for the night.
I know. Yeah.
Meat and water, you see.
Yeah.
And you had to get your pipe filled to get it lit because there were a shortage of matches.
Yes.
And we kept dallying these things over months. That was only just cussedness we were doing that for.
Yes.
But that turned out to be good.
Uh-huh.
That delay thing, we got 20 minutes away with that.
Yeah.
And no question of.
No, because
Yeah.
you've been doing it
Been doing it.
before planning ahead of it.
And then we reached the stage where apparently the smelter rat,
Yeah.
the fact that some of them by some chance missed there.
Uh-huh.
Well, he would be missed where I wouldn't. You know what I
Aye.
mean?
I know.
And having that, I had a quick run around.
Yeah.
There's no sign of him.
Yes.
Either as person or in voice.
No.
And then a call came, get them in quick.
Uh-huh.
Next thing was, they all started to scurry to lock us in, and I heard a call for me, quick, you want it down here. The so-and-so was painted.
Yes.
One was painted. And I, John, I told her, didn't think he was a strong country chap, don't you know,
Yes.
from Mayo.
Yes.
And I raced down, do you see, and turned him over where he had fallen at his own door.
Yes.
Turned him over with a big wink, do you see.
From the fin.
With the dead man.
Ah.
It'll hold him a while. They had to go and get the hospital orderly.
Yeah.
We wouldn't let them shut the door, this man.
Aye.
When they wanted to lock him into a cell.
I see.
Oh, I said, no, you can't do that to a sick man.
Yes.
He'd be dead before anything happened.
Yes.
And they had to go and get that.
Yes. That delayed.
Oh, it took 25 minutes at least.
Sure. Yes.
You see. And then, up to that, I had a particularly, well, not particularly, a special duty from the time they were preparing to go, leading up to when they were quitting.
Yes.
They were quitting, let's say, at 6:30.
Yes.
So it was in the autumn time or sometime, because I know it was dark.
Yes. I know.
And I know it was early in the evening.
Yes.
Well, now, my cell, the reason I got it, I was the end cell. And over there, from my cell, you could see the big army hut. Oh, great big thing with the army men.
Yeah.
See. And then I could see, from looking that way, I could see patrols going over there.
Yes.
And by looking down in that direction, a wee bit farther in, I could see ones sprucely dressed. And what I was to do was to judge, use my own judgment. I had a TD from Limerick as courier.
Yes.
I had to stay in myself for 2 or 3 hours.
Yes.
And what I had to do was to estimate where each soldier or warrior was going.
Yes.
Try and estimate, like for instance, is he going out on leave?
Yes.
You saw a fellow sprucely dressed and no gun
Yes, I know.
marching out of that, you see.
Ah.
He's going left, you see. And we'll say then, there's 14 then going on leave.
Yes.
This is coming up at closing time there, but a whole lot of them were going off duty.
Yes, I know.
Leaving night patrol. Then look at here, see so many. And after I see some of those breaking up, I see there were 10 there a while ago. Do you see? 7 of them have moved away.
Yes.
On that such in the lane in the garden, there was only a patrol of 3.
Yes.
This was what I had
You
to do.
had to
Estimate
assess
the
the
number and
situation.
try and estimate where they were.
Uh-huh.
If a certain one moved over here, where was he likely to go?
Yes.
You see?
Uh-huh.
And made it kept me on it.
Oh, did it would, those 3 hours.
Aye.
Well, when you could see, did you have to stand on your bed or
I
something?
stood in the bed.
Ah.
We had, at that time we were superior prisoners. Each of us had a stool and a chair.
Oh, I see.
Because we said we couldn't lie on the floor or the bed. I
Aye.
wanted something, and these were props for the bed.
I see.
No.
Well, up to the time you got this status of prisoners of war and proper treatment, you'd been on what? Beds on the floor?
No beds on the floor, the normal place for a bed
mattress.
to be. Mattress. Oh,
And is the normal bed
on
of
a
a
board.
prisoner? Ah.
A board, a three-tier board, you know.
Yes, yes.
The width of
Ah.
a small single bed.
Yes.
And board, and on that, mattresses. No
And the
springs.
flowers that are raised off the
No
floor?
spring. It had been raised by, there were 2 blocks.
Underneath.
With that depth.
Ah.
The board wasn't on there on the floor, but it was sitting on 2 attached blocks.
I know.
See, it's all right when you got used to it.
I know.
No.
Was that the kind of bread they had in Crumlin Road, say, when you were put in that
Aye,
time?
when I went in there in Cumberland Road, I got to bed with no mattress.
Good, save it.
Because that was the rule. If you got hard labour,
Yes.
you had to do the first fortnight or 3 weeks on a bare board.
Yes.
And I remember that. I'm breaking the discourse now.
That's all right.
I went to the doctor, went to the governor, and found out that it so happened to said that I just have a cold on me, I said.
Yeah.
And I didn't enjoy this feat or wanted it on the board.
Yeah.
I said, I don't want to dodge anything as far as I take what's coming to me. But I think a sick man shouldn't be expected to do that.
Yeah.
I said, I suggest that you give me a mattress. And I said, at the end of a couple of weeks when I'm better again, you can take it away and you can keep me a month on the deal.
Yeah.
When he said he hadn't power to do that for a sick man, but the doctor would. So I said, I have one here. The doctor was a good decent Catholic.
In Belfast. Who would he have been? You can't remember.
It was a name that one.
Oh, Flaherty was it?
Damn it, that's it.
That's it. I remember him.
That's the name. That's the name. I'm going to say.
A name that shouldn't be
Fitzgerald.
No, it's O'Flaherty.
No, they are. Fitzgerald and O'Flaherty. He was sent for, when I wasn't sent for. I was sent for the following morning.
Yeah.
Doctor had arrived. He's saying,
Yeah.
anybody like me want to see a doctor? You had your name down.
Yeah.
But the governor had my name down in this case to see that. The doctor came and had a look at me and said, "Oh, you'll get better. You're cold all right." I still had to keep him on board.
Dear.
And the fucker was, he was invited nearly by the governor
To give you a mattress.
Aye, the governor was decent there.
But were you sentenced at this time?
Aye, I was only sentenced to 3 months.
But that was from Belfast.
Aye.
Was that following 1917?
That was in N17, where, what was I sentenced for?
That's what I'm trying to figure. Was it for your...
Oh, I wrote a letter to Catholic Son.
Yes.
It'll take me a week to tell you, do you see?
Well, tell us.
I wrote a letter to Cal. Cal and I were great friends then, and he was still in some of the jails in England. And he was a leading Labour man.
Yes.
And when he was gone, do you see, when anybody was leading in anything, he was held.
Yeah.
I, at that time, was organising the teachers.
Yes.
I wasn't one myself, do you see, so far as the board was concerned.
No.
Still not been paid, but I was still on it.
Oh, I remember, yes, they had suspended you.
That suspended me.
I see, yes.
And the fellow J.K. O'Neill, my manager as a monitor,
Yes.
up in Sacred Heart, up in the Bone.
Yes.
He and I were great friends when I was a monitor. Now I'm back as a teacher. I get a message from him. The teachers were now clamouring for some more money.
Yes.
I told you, I think, the other day that the only bunch of men in Ireland that got no increase during the war was the teachers.
And the old age pensioners.
Oh, the old
Oh,
age
no,
pensioners
they
were
got it,
public.
well, they did that.
Now, Father J.K. told me what he wanted. He said, I want you to reorganise the INTO.
Yes.
He said, so far as I know about the INTO, he said, you know, I'm in favour of the teachers getting proper salaries.
Yeah.
He says, at the moment, the INTO is composed of old fogies.
Yes.
The only trouble is to get pensions fixed up for themselves when they retire.
Yes.
And he said, there's no youth in it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that was one of the reasons why there was no youth.
I know,
You see?
yes.
And that was also one of the reasons why youth wasn't being catered for both ways.
Yes.
Now, I said, I want you to do it, to start organising an assistants union.
Yes.
Cut out all your
Principals.
form an assistants union. And I said to him, Father, I would like to do it. I said, but I'm not the one, say, paying under a black knot already, do you see? Many, even of the teachers, will say, this fellow's going to walk us all
Into Sinn Féin.
He said, when you were in jail, you see, I sent for, and he named 3 or 4 teachers.
Yes.
And they were all afraid to do it, you see.
Yes.
They just looked at me. They understand, Father, to say. I'm afraid too. But I hope you're not, you see. Also, it wasn't costing me a thought. I'm only thinking of the fact that I'd spoil it.
Yes.
If you agree with it now, so see, that's all, there's somebody starting to move. And I'm going to give you every facility. Number one, he says, I happen to be under the bishop in charge of St. Mary's Hall.
Yes.
I'm sole proprietor of St. Mary's Hall.
Yes.
Number one, he says, you have St. Mary's Hall at any time you want, free.
Yes.
The big hall or the minor hall.
Yes.
That's number one. Down in the minor hall, he said, they have a library there.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is devoted to labour works.
Yes.
And the books are there for you and your men. In the early days, he says, to know what you're talking about, labour.
Yes.
And that was that. I said, well, what we would propose starting? That's up to you. I don't know what.
Yeah.
I only want to organise the assistants and the assistants unit and join the Labour Party.
Yes.
Well, he didn't know he was raising a hell of a hair.
Yes, I know.
Well, will I tell you this now?
Yes.
I thought the matter over for 3 or 4 days. And then the first ones I got talking to was John and Pat Duffin, God rest him, and Liam Gaynor, like I told you about, and Pat McFadden. All close friends and all the GA.
Yes.
When we had a meeting in our house, 6 or 7 of us. And I told them the position. And they were delighted at this idea of having a hall for meeting and at all times and get work done without cost.
Yes.
And I suggested then what we do is we could have broadened out.
Yes.
See, and the best way to broaden out is if each one of us here can get 2 more men.
Yes.
2 more men. And have a meeting of those. Now that'll be 6 of us.
Yeah.
12 more.
Yeah.
And we'll do the same, having explained it to these, we'll get each of them to get 2 more.
Yeah.
I said in 2 months we should have about 100.
Yes.
And then we can get going. So we did, and we met each week. Either in our house for the first, and then it was too small.
The manor hall.
The manor hall. And or the committee room, as a matter of fact, first.
Yes.
Well, we got nicely where we had about 30 or 40.
Yes.
And then somebody, I don't know who to mention, we're all papists.
Yes.
There'll be a Catholic one and it won't work.
That's true.
We've got to get the lambs in.
Yes.
And then the question was, Danny, you know a lamb? I'm going to start to go in. I didn't know damn one.
You call them lambs in Belfast?
Oh, lambs were. We were Mickeys. The
I wonder what the lamb then came from.
Oh, that's derivation from Liamites.
Oh,
Williamites.
I see.
Williamites, you
Well,
see.
is that only in GA circles are called lambs?
Not at all over the city, all the Catholics.
They're the
called them
wonderful.
lambs. And most of them didn't know.
They call them Billy Boys
I know
today.
anything but, I can know anything but Protestants, you see.
Yes.
And I can know all Protestants, they were lamb. And we were the Mickeys, you see.
I know,
They called us Mickeys. And I often amused at that they didn't call us Paddies.
That's right.
And you know why they called us Mickeys?
No,
You should know.
I don't.
There are more Michaels in Ireland than Patricks.
Is that so?
Aye.
Well, that's
It was another
amazing.
thing now. It may have been back in those years only. I mean, years before my time even. Because
I
I
know.
got the Mickey's name.
I know.
Michaels, you
Ah.
see. And the Liamites were originally Williamites.
Yes, I know.
And then amongst the Irish,
Yes,
they were Liamites.
yes, I know.
And then what they call Liams just.
Yes, yes.
And then it became corrupted to
The
Liam.
lambs.
So,
Well, you were asked anybody know a lamb.
no, and I think it was about, at the end out of about 30 or 40 we had, there was 4 of them.
Yeah.
3 of them didn't know him to speak to, and the 4th one, John Duffin, was arrested. John knew a fella taught up in the school, and they met every morning and they said good morning.
That's
I don't know his
close
name, and I'm sure he
association.
doesn't know my name. You see, he only knew it, we were both teachers.
Yes.
A bit good morning to one another. I don't know his name,
Ah.
so I said, don't you worry about the name, stop him.
Ah.
And ask him his name, do you see, and tell him that,
What you're
see,
contemplating.
this is money in the pocket a bit tight.
I know.
Well, I have a plan of getting him some more money.
Uh-huh.
And if each one he had asked one, ask them to save
Yes.
time to get
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah.
So it turned out about 10 Protestants in the next meeting. And then about 20 or 30 next meeting, we had more than half full of the minor hall.
Yes.
And one of the Protestants, debating what way the best organise it, one of the Protestant fellows said, whoever was in the chair, took the chair, told him, Chairman, you know, he said, having this Catholic hall, he said, would prevent a whole lot of our people from joining.
Yes.
You know, we don't want to be led up a street.
Yes, indeed.
So it was agreed that we would continue for a little while in Mary's Hall until we got a number that would be worthwhile going to somewhere else, taking another hall.
Yes.
And eventually decided on Garfield Seat Hall, which is putrid, as the fellow said.
Yes.
Neutral. And by this time we had enough on our own hands, but we wanted hundreds more.
Yes.
So we put an advertisement in the paper.
Yes.
No, some of us in the meantime had gone down and joined the INTO,
I see.
which met once every 3 months.
Yes.
And it was part of our organisation. And during one of the 3 months, there was such a meeting
Yes.
held where?
I
In a
wouldn't know.
public building in Belfast.
So the Ulster Hall.
No. Your sense of humour is going bad.
Well, it does indeed.
Museum.
Oh, because that was the ANTU.
And I thought the
Wasn't
funniest
that was
thing,
just...
Father O'Neill described them as old fogies.
That's true.
And then they met in the museum.
Well, that was the right place for them to
But
meet.
just for them. Somebody joking about your
Ah,
sense of
I
humour.
know.
They, we joined in an ordinary way.
Yes.
Somebody sensible amongst us had decided you better be in some way before you got anything else. So we were now reached in with about a dozen of us
Yes.
in the INTO.
Yes.
And very welcome by the old fellas. They didn't
Yes,
know
I
this
know.
whole thing was going on. Glad to see the youth taking some interest in their profession.
Yes,
See,
yes, yes.
well, they were nice enough old fellas, you know.
Yes.
But we plastered the Irish News and the Evening Telegraph,
Yes.
the newsletter, with a
Yeah.
big advertisement. Every man, with 50 or 60 paid,
Right. There you are. Yeah.
paid a bob or so towards expenses and paid for these advertisements.
Yes.
And it just said the general meeting of teachers
Yes.
held in Garfield Street Hall on Saturday, such a date at 11 a.m.
Yes.
No names to it.
No.
Then we gathered, you see, and it was agreed at our own meeting after it was made, nobody knows who did this, especially you. You see,
Yes.
I wasn't to know anything about it.
Yes, I
Oh,
know.
and there was another couple of maybe a few fellas
Yeah.
kept their names quiet. But all they're good too.
Yes.
There was some of the Protestant fellas, you know,
Yeah.
giving us a bit of good solid advice.
Yes, I know.
The student courses was held there, and it included, as far as I could find it, every man jack
Yes.
of the old folkies had come too.
Yes.
And their principal thing was, who's doing it?
Yes.
And they were going around, and so were others, who's doing it? And we were going around
Who's doing it?
asking them who was
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
You see,
Ah.
and we finally, nobody knew who was doing it.
Yeah.
But then a lad primed to it. And I said, well, we're not here at all. And a crowd of us gathered here. Well, at least let us do something we are here.
Yes.
That was agreed.
Uh-huh.
Meantime, we had already a fellow who was an incompetent in the ordinary way, but not one of our committee or anything else.
No.
We proposed him for chairman,
Yes.
because he would be able to say with positive truth that this was a surprise to him.
Yes, I know.
How was he selected? But he was honoured by being
Yeah.
selected by so many teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat McFadden, who was a head old screwed on, well, he was sitting over purposely at the end, the far end of the front seat.
Yes.
The chairman had gone up on the platform,
Yeah.
and somebody of our crowd in the Bartley Hall, Mr. Chairman, now that you're up there, glad to see you up there. Would you need somebody to take notes? A secretary or something like that, they call him.
Yeah.
He didn't know what they were called.
Oh.
I was commissioned in this one job. I said, there's a fellow down at the front seat there, looks capable to me.
To be a secretary.
The secretary, I proposed that fellow down there. There's Pat McFadden.
Yes.
Hey, I didn't know the name, of course.
Oh,
And Pat was there, you see, primed and everything.
yes.
And priming the chairman when he was up.
Yes.
Hey, So anyway, what was finally decided after a lot of debating what should be done and so on, and this bit of a hint about forming a union. No, I've left a wee bit out.
That was due
During
to
the
that,
course of the time we were building up by one man to the other, I thought about it every night in bed. And then it dawned on me, here we are. Father O'Neill wants us to form an assistants union. And there's already a principals union, NTO. And if we form an assistants union, we'll divide and rule immediately.
Yes, in the labour ranks.
We'll fight with one another instead of the government.
L'Union fait la force.
Put it up to the next meeting of the caucus crowd.
Yes.
Put it out to them, and they all agreed. A man agreed. And my alternative was, instead of forming an assistants union, let us in a body join the NTO.
Oh, yeah.
So I got up and proposed that, you see, at the meeting. It was my suggestion. I said, well, at least you can do that. You see, it was agreed. Unanimous, you see. And now we have reached that stage where we're now within about a fortnight of another meeting.
Of your own?
Oh, no, of the museum group.
Of the museum group,
And it was agreed that we'd enter that.
Yeah.
And then it was a joke. This was completely unprepared. We all thought, when you went in and joined, give you a hand your name, you were a member.
Yes.
See, I paid, there was some $5 or something, very small fee per year. We proposed, and the old chairman got up and explained nice and quietly. They are delighted they were to see all those young women and young men joining up, but they must keep to the rules and regulations. Yeah. The rule was they were proposed and seconded. See, and at this meeting, and at the next meeting, they would be considered as a committee, and at the following meeting, if they were all right,
they were
character, and otherwise they were accepted. And I was going to take 6 months to get in. And this time we were counting the days. Like,
oh no, you wanted.
We wanted movement. So we spoke, about 8 of us, one after the other, pointing out that you were to send these things in writing.
Yes.
To see individually. A suggestion was that we paper be sent around and filled in.
Aye.
To see, and members could say in the name at the bottom, I propose a list, and the whole list went along the streets.
Yes.
So there was a half-hour curious writing. The old man didn't see any particular reason why we shouldn't. You see, after all, we were wanting to do something for the good of the body.
Yes, yes.
Get us in soon. Well, that was done, and we talked on till about 3 in the day.
Yes.
From 11 in the morning. And by that time, it was time to go home. They were getting tired and hungry. So somebody proposed adjournment of the meeting. Of the business until the next meeting, 3 months hence.
I know.
So some other body jumped up and said, Mister, could you not have a special meeting next Saturday? Oh, to have a special meeting, you had to have a requisition form.
Yes, to see, the red tip.
That took so many members of certain standing to sign a requisition and state on that requisition the exact purpose for which the meeting was held. You see, and begged to put out to us that only the business assigned for a special meeting could be dealt with.
Yes.
We knew that another bit of organising would have another couple of hundred ready to go in.
Yes, I know.
So that wasn't satisfactory at all. They already started to sign the requisition, and a thought struck me. And I stood up and said, Chairman, wouldn't it save you and the secretary and the committee a lot of trouble if instead of holding this special meeting, we just adjourned this meeting, now we're all here. Adjourned the meeting for a week.
Yeah. Well, in April 1963, Seamus Dobbyn and his wife came to stay with me and stayed a few days, and this trip here was made on the morning of May the 1st, 1963, before they left to go back to Dublin, where he now lives. They had stayed in Dunloy and then they came to me. So this is the tape that made on that occasion. Oh, well,
lovely. You were allowed to listen, that just cried.
Not at all, no, sure.
I was watching the opportunity all morning.
No.
That's it, I was turning you attention.
Oh, no.
What do you think?
No.
I said that nearer and nearer. Because mind you, he gets to leave now for anybody's empty.
Oh, I know, yes, I know, yes, he's that gentleman now.
Just flexes him. For anybody.
Is this his porridge here?
That's his porridge. And oh, you hadn't yours
Oh,
too.
I don't take porridge, but I mean, did you have yours?
Oh, I had mine, I didn't.
But you didn't have your bacon and egg yet.
Oh, well, I don't know.
You'll have to take it.
I'll take a bit of it, but no, I'm not a bit hungry after this.
No, and then there's a kind of an excitement.
Yes, there is. Well, it was just, I wouldn't be a bit excited, but I'm glad to see him so well after yesterday.
Yes.
For I wouldn't for the world let him and back
Oh, jaded.
tired and
Well, they would never let him die. They'd never let him
I
die.
would now, even last year, he'd have had at home and a lie.
Yeah.
He'd get that headache.
Yes.
And whether it's times it would be migraine, you know,
Yes.
from the time. And I think, like, he's eaten more eggs here than he did at home.
Aye, that made it
That could be.
unbalanced.
Yeah, and then he does what I think's bad for me. Eats them as hard as a brick.
I see, that's true, yes. And
You
you
know.
get those herds of breast
I
here.
would.
That's
No, that's the way he takes
no egg
them.
butter yeast
Yeah,
here.
I
It's
know.
the rule of thumb.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
but I think it was maybe that.
Aye, they're not good for you that way. As a matter of
And
fact,
then-
I could nearly take them and drink them. You know the
Yeah,
way.
well, that's the fellow.
They're better for you that way.
And Father McGugan's with me.
Aye.
I have to watch his egg.
I know.
That it's nearly slippery, and I
I know, yes, no, people can't take that ordinarily.
No, where he can take it, and I like it. I like the yolk soft.
Yes, I know. But
he
like
can
some
take-
kind of
It
shape on.
takes him all his time getting it up on a spoon, you
I
know. Well,
know.
that's the way he likes it. And I couldn't look at it
No, I
that
know.
way. But he's, in Father Dan said if he took it hard.
Yes, she's calling you there.
Oh, no,
I think
it's Seamus.
he's calling you.
He's on the stairs, I think.
It's like the royal
Come here,
progress.
go and see
We
it.
used to talk about the sovereigns, the procession. It wasn't a procession, it was the royal progress.
Here's your
The royal
porridge egg.
progress.
Mm-hmm.
Funny thing.
Now, I'll get the place.
Oh, that's what it is, you see, yes, so it is. Oh,
I
yeah.
was surprised. I thought it was the cook.
If you don't, it only takes some of it now, Seamus.
It happened to me like in bed.
Yes.
And I thought maybe was it the arm out.
Aye.
And I heated it up. Then sure the pain, with the pill, the pain was going. And this pain went to see me start there.
Yes, and up there.
Up the arm. Not.
Excuse me, the door. Thank you very much. Morning.
If you listen, Daddy,
What?
could you make the porridge real warm because it's in 5 minutes. I'm not thinking as much as that because she.
No, I'll just give the wee blue dish and a little in it for you. It's to take them over.
Big one. That's a little. Psychology.
Right.
See it big.
Aye. Remember the A is bigger than the stomach.
That's right.
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 That's right. So this there's not many articles of a national character in this article. But ridiculous, pro fide et patria. That was the motto of the Hibernians, hands across the sea. Board of Air.
Aye.
For
The
faith
Board of
and
Ireland.
fatherland.
I think the Board of Ireland was the opinion on
That could have been.
what other was?
Well, there was the Hibernian Society in America, which was really, what was more sort of an insurance society more than anything else.
Oh, I see. But then there was some Board of Ireland.
Aye.
Because I remember my father was in that.
Aye.
And now when I look back, I had no other men in it.
Yeah.
And they're all opinions.
Oh, it
They
has.
must have been.
Yes. But then it got sullied.
I see.
It was still called Board of Air, even in the days when they were anti-Sinn Féin.
Oh, I see.
You see, they still kept on the title, but they went away far from the ideal.
No, isn't it?
They weren't.
Schmidt did amazing. I know you wouldn't beat it.
Said what?
I say, I know you wouldn't beat the other if you took all the porridge.
Think what other?
The Russian egg.
Well, you
Well,
can
for the
just-
journey, she said.
You can just nibble at it.
That's it.
That's a lovely scone.
Is that what me?
Why, you're at the
Yes.
outside in the yard. What?
She baked a lovely apple cake for her, and that bread is beautiful. That's nicer
That's
than the
fine
oven.
stone bread, the best.
Good bread.
And it's as light as a sponge.
Yeah.
Indeed it is.
And is she accustomed to taking that kind of bread?
Oh no, she baked last evening.
She baked it only yes, just in the pan she baked.
And it's nice too. The
Oh, it
sister.
is nice. Certainly lovely.
Yes.
And you didn't need the pictures, did you, Father? The
Pardon?
photographs.
If I?
Did you get the
It
snaps?
didn't come yet.
Oh, I see. Oh, well,
They're
maybe
then,
what's in the post?
I'll post them to you immediately.
Good,
they
yeah,
come.
good
And
boy.
then when I left in the negative to be developed, I said 2 copies of each, but I want to send simultaneously
Oh, yes.
a copy to sister.
The dad do, he
Vivian.
just got it.
Yeah. Oh, well, they'll come too, and then there'll be somebody asking why didn't he perform the ceremony at the wedding.
Exactly.
You can say he's an honourable retirement.
That's what, I think that's what the qualification said. For his father, your cousin,
Van McMahon.
McMullen, he describes it in Latin after his term of 2 term. 2 term as in January.
Yes.
Consultant General.
Consultant General, yes.
He was now retired to the college in Galway.
Yes.
Where his duties were to have the Latin for honourable retirement.
Honourable retirement.
And hear the confessions of the students.
Yes, I know. It's very good
Which
directed, eh?
more or less were supposed to be harmless.
That's right.
No, I just had to do the confessions for them.
I see.
Did you know? Oh, no, you
No,
don't
I
know
don't.
what you belong to.
Harry Dabtrist, if we should.
Oh, yes.
Because they have there was a fellow McNiff was head of the Redemptorist novitiate over there in the west. But not in Galway, I think it was it might have been more in Roscommon.
Yeah.
They have a
Oh, well,
novitiate there.
he was all countries. He had about 10 languages.
Is that right?
He's a wee man but the head of yourself.
McMullen.
And not unlike, he was a first cousin of mine. And his father and mother were teachers. Like my father and his mother were brother and sister.
Yes,
And the whole family went into religion but one.
yes.
There's 2 nuns and 4 boys in religion.
Okay.
But he was an absolute genius.
Yes.
And he just went up. And for over 20 years, he was, their term of office is something like 5 years, but he was always reappointed.
I see.
And he's now 81 years of age.
My goodness.
And
Fresh.
as light as you are,
I know.
and if you saw the walk of him.
I know.
And not unlike you, only that he doesn't wear glasses.
I see.
Like, and very gentle.
Yeah.
And
10 minutes a day.
10 minutes walk.
My goodness.
And he, do you know what he attributes his good health and keeping slim? The plainest of food.
Oh, well, that is always that's the secret of ours.
Yeah.
I think.
He said didn't go in, never went in for heavy meals.
No, and I believe that we eat too much meat as human beings.
Well,
I'm
that's
not a vegetarian,
no.
but I think that we could do with less meat, and certainly with less fries.
Yeah. Oh, no fries at all.
No, I'd say that's
But
right.
he wouldn't have a fry, and when he comes for tea, he'd say no, the
A boiled
sauce.
egg, say.
He'd like a lightly boiled
That's
egg.
true.
Yeah.
You take the Cistercians and these who are vegetarians by their rule.
Yeah.
They look to be about 90.
Yeah. They do.
The average, they have the greatest record for average longevity than any body.
I see.
Well, if you saw this man, you wouldn't believe that he was that age. We're hoping he'll be at the wedding too.
Yeah.
And we're hoping you're...
Well, dear child, I've told you that the priority is good. With all due respect to the
No.
Now, the first Thursday you must take that into consideration, and when she was arranging this wedding, she
She
didn't
forgot
think
about
of
that. I'm sure she did. And I'm sure there's an awful lot won't. I'm sure
Get the man his breakfast.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah.
The confessions.
There's a
Oh, aye. There's several priests.
There's
must-
about 22 priests,
Oh,
friends
I know.
of hers, invited. So they'll be in the same boat.
Well, the city ones, Seamus could go. No, they
Well,
couldn't.
the Dublin ones could go.
Aye.
You see,
You can always get somebody to stand by.
but my father Tom Guckin He's from North Atlantic.
Oh, he's a parish priest.
He'll have a straight.
Oh, he can go along and say, like the gospel, he says, go and thou goest. Come and thou comest. He can say to the star. He's an adjutant general in that condition.
That's right.
I know.
The memory is Annie has, that's his for it was turned. I should remember he liked it turned. Well, she says, would you like a bit of dip bread or bread and butter?
He doesn't want to eat much, eh?
Well then, I'll tell her you're all right, bit of bread and butter then.
And if you don't want
And
to
it's
take
all
bread
right,
relief in, then
have we
you
got bread and
not
butter?
upset her, you
That's
know.
just a very thing.
You know what I
Take a
mean?
wee,
Take a wee
piece of the
nibble.
rasher,
Ah,
and you take it.
yes, the very thing, when to suit another family.
Quite cheap and that's right.
They hold everything, man. The tea and, no, just
There's a fork missing. But I'll
A
take
fork.
it a fork, sit down. And
Where'll I
I'll
get the tea for you?
I'll get it. Come on, get it.
No, really, it's a put.
Do you see? To keep the peace.
I forgot. After all that, she had that much trouble.
That is, and then it can be construed as a criticism, an oblique criticism.
Oh,
of
yes,
course.
I haven't been properly done, I've made it. Now, when I get out of structure, I suppose like anybody else,
Yeah.
I didn't tell you the joke. But the smoke in the pipe, the old man we had,
That's going to be a beautiful
grand
day.
old man, family doctor.
Yeah.
Now, Seamus, give us what we don't want.
I took everything but that. What's that?
Would have let me take
That's all right. Ah,
Here it is.
that's yours.
Here, now what we'll do is, give me that.
Let's see, right.
Look, he's fond of eggs, Daddy.
Well, he doesn't want them.
Oh, she nobody. Oh,
No,
you.
no, that's Seamus's split.
Oh, that was yours.
This is getting, this is
Oh, yes, this is going to be.
Don't
Oh,
mind
there
taking
it is.
that.
No, well, go on.
For goodness sake.
Well, what about the old Dr.
I think
Seamus?
we're fighting.
Quarter of that. Quarter of third.
What about the old Dr. Hamish?
Hey, I got this old complicated and stuff. Not
Yeah.
really, but no.
Your fork's here, fella. Oh, yes.
I have it on my plate.
Oh, I need a chair.
Oh, I can get past through there. Well, Seamus,
Mommy had really so smoking was doing another.
I need it with
Well,
Seamus
you see-
from the, do you want the milk and first in your?
Yes, save your China. That, oh, he doesn't like much. If you take that one and give him this, we'll hardly any milk in it.
That's just going to be all right, I think.
No, it's strong.
It's very
That's all
strong.
right. Well, no, but it's, I
I
had thought I'd too much milk in it.
There's no sugar in it yet.
Well, that's good too.
Go to church. No, destroy your nice tablecloth. Some lovely
Now,
tablecloth.
what about the doctor then? The old doctor.
I had him in the stairs before he went up.
Mommy got a couple of patients of this to get me.
Yeah,
And ask him, take a message from her to cut my smoking here.
yeah,
Whether they did it or not, he didn't do it to me.
yeah.
He had a just one time with tobacco. Maybe he should leave up, but it didn't come to him.
Mm-hmm.
No, I laid up in the bed. I'd been in bed for a week, feeling miserable. I got a flu or something as well as cough.
Yeah,
You know that I mean, taste nothing.
yeah.
Smoking's no good.
No, that's
So I
right.
had a pipe on the pedestal beside the bed. And this morning, we knew he was due. He said he'd be here at 7 in the morning. And I heard him come. The older and Mommy and started to tell him. She believed the smoking. And he agreed.
You could hear that.
I could hear every word they were saying. They were at the
He
bottom.
wasn't dead then.
You turned deaf now, either.
We were at the bottom of the stairs. And what am I going to say? I just can't say stop smoking. Just like that.
No.
I say, he's an old man. See, Mommy says there is some talk about tobacco or cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
That's when she smoked much or anything like that.
Uh-huh.
See, so unknown to me, I had my pipe, I had given him the opportunity to think that the paper sitting there.
What do we
I
say?
understood, you see, and he seized on it and examined me in an ordinary way and said in the bed, "Oh, I mammy got him to promise that he would get me up cigarettes."
Yes.
And I went over and over there about 10 minutes to debate what the line of attack would be. So he came up and I was prepared for it. And he finally said, looked at the pipe. Now, it could come out of the blue.
No.
Having heard the conversation,
Yes.
I said, "Okay." I said, "Yes." I offered it to him. And he said, "What kind of tobacco do you smoke?" I said, "Plug." That's strong. That's the strongest I can get. And the cheapest. But he says that you wouldn't do you smoke much? I just told him the truth. Yeah, I knew it didn't, but I told him the truth. It so happened. I said, "Doctor, I haven't smoked for the last 3 days. The thing has no taste." You see?
Yeah.
And he jumps up, he said, "You mustn't let it get you like that. Where is your tobacco? Where's your tobacco?" And I told him it was hanging on my coat. I told him,
He was scared.
"Which pocket?" he said.
Yeah.
I told him the pocket. And he went and he got out the roof of it. And then some more,
Yes.
But where's your pipe? Where's your knife? It was hanging on the waistcoat and I handed it over. He got it out. Fill that pipe now. "I'm not going," he says. "Do you empty it?" And he sat there and he emptied the pipe.
Well, they didn't want you to be too much of a shock to the system to stop it immediately.
No, it was a sign to him that I was getting down.
Oh, yes, you were getting, yes, I see, yes.
Enjoy the thing that I enjoyed most.
Yes, I know.
You see, and he wanted me to get back to normal through.
And if you don't eat that, I'd say that's a sign you're not back to normal. It's a bread.
That's a piece of bread. I don't even pay bread.
Has he got
He eats
butter?
at night. He has.
Butter on the way?
And look, a honey with a butter.
Carney with butter.
What's the meaning of cow?
Go carney.
Oh, go.
Carney, huh?
But do they pronounce it that way?
No, they don't, like, it's really, it's like a repetition of the word carney twice, but to accentuate the carniness.
No, I think that's
Yes,
good.
you see. Now, but then whenever you smelt this great pipe fumes of tobacco on that occasion, you said, "This is serious."
Oh, and I came downstairs when I didn't stop.
I mean, when the doctor came down, did he explain to you why?
Ah, he did. He said he'd rather see him.
Psychologically, he'd have to get back to his old ways. I suppose, Seamus, you're smoking a pipe nearly all your life. It's a pipe you were smoking.
Since I might say I started in the pipe. I had a few good bands in the early days.
Yes.
Sucker to your cigarettes, you know.
Yes, I know.
Little sucker.
Yes.
The men in those days did the same with the pipe.
No,
Man,
I've seen him passing the pipe on.
and they were not even rubbing that.
Not at all, no.
Only
Sure, what married wasn't rubbing it, any.
Aye, but the minute took this and gave up the pipe. Sure. Alec McCabe, not Alec, Miles. Miles McCabe from Callan. I lost that man.
Yeah.
Until I started college. He and I, the man named Crane from Kerry,
Yes.
and a fourth man, by a name like Curry or something, from the west. We knocked about together, and this Crane taught me smoke.
Yes.
He knew his first I didn't smoke. One day he saw me, a cigarette, something.
Yeah.
More than it turned up me.
Uh-huh.
You didn't smoke these things before. I said I smoked an old one. That's right, said he, then you're going to start them. You're going to get pain.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I see the idea. It was McCreed saying, Mick,
Yes.
you want to put me
Yes.
up smoking? Give me a cigar.
Uh-huh.
No. He had started when he was 15.
Yes.
And he told me the rules of smoking with a pipe. And don't empty it the first go, or even the second go, or maybe even the third go. Have a few draws at a time, and don't spit out.
Ah, indeed.
Draws.
You found it very hard not.
Did you ever see with compliments smoking away in a big spit into the
Oh, I
fire?
know. Yes. Well,
And every man you saw smoking.
oh, yes.
He was the first I saw, didn't he?
Yes.
And I thought, here's a big good joke. That me with a nice new pipe and new tobacco.
Yes.
Then get sick.
That's right.
See? Anyway, we went one day on we were playing cards. And I won £50 and I hit me.
Yes.
No, that's big winnings.
It is
Well,
was.
when you had maybe 10 in your pocket.
That's true, yes.
Crane was one of the players. And all over the counting our winnings losses. You see, you have a price of a pig now.
Yes.
I could annuate it tomorrow. That was the off day. Buy a pipe. So he came in with me. And I bought a Peterson's bent pipe.
Yes, the cricket ship.
We were at the bottom of the head of saliva and come up into your mouth.
I know.
And I heard that and announced mixture.
Yes.
We really don't let man produce the mixture, it's just put them back in the tin. Give them an ounce of plug.
Real black stuff.
Really,
Make some plug.
Aye.
But I said no, I said yes. He just burns me into it.
I know.
And you see, he was a master in that case, he was a smoker.
Yes, and he was instructing you.
Aye. I got it, and I would come out and he filled the pipe. And what's carefully, I think he was counting how many pucks I would take.
And up stuff.
And so that's enough of that. Empty it now. Throw away the good tobacco. Throw away the good tobacco. A lot of nicotine. Mixed with the saliva. And that gets the real Mackay's, you see.
Yes.
Or whatever is corresponding thing.
Yes.
Did that. An hour later, it says, I'm going to tell you, baby, again for you. And I had to watch the process
I know.
breaking up.
I know, and rolling it. Yeah.
Watch carefully. Because they had to get that was a great part of the pipe smoker. Wonder who could make it not too fine that it would draw up its shaft.
I know. And
Not too thick to let the air in.
Yes.
It was, you see, it was like boulders.
Yes, I know.
The air was getting it all
I
around.
know.
So you had to, took me about a week to get it to that consistency. But anyway, I said, that was one of the ideas of it, not spitting and getting ready for fresh papers.
Yes.
And it wasn't ever bitter.
I see.
Whereas you got a second, now come to McCabe. That's how I learned to smoke. Come to Miles McCabe. Miles was walking beside me the same I was on the other side. Miles was there and Green was there. And the other Corral was there, darling. And Green was smoking as usual, eternally.
Yes.
And I happened to look up, I don't know what. I happened to look up in there, there was no moon. But the stars were there in hundreds of millions.
Yes.
I never remember such a night of stars.
Yes.
And the moon went out of the way.
Yes, accentuated.
Accentuated. And I made the remark to the other three, look up that lovely sorry.
Yeah.
In the meantime, Miles had made the remark to Green that they seemed to be enjoying that pipe.
Yes.
Green said, I wouldn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be smoking it.
Yes.
See, and then Green. Major said, would you give me a suck?
Yes.
Well, she said, but Major said.
Yeah.
He didn't seem to be interested in teaching him to smoke.
No, I know.
But he made yourself and he gave him the pipe. It was a few minutes after that. O'Malley smoked it away an amateur to us, or a newcomer.
Yeah. Oh, they're big puff.
When you turn, you stop at all. You know the big smoker.
I know that draws in the jaws.
I know it sucked now and then.
I know,
And the whole idea is that keep it lit and not have to concentrate.
That's true, yes.
It's like the gears of a car.
Yes, I know.
So, mine was doing that. And when I made the remark about the stars,
Yeah.
they all looked up.
Yes.
And Miles forgot the papers in his mouth.
Yes.
He forgot it.
The saliva.
Other fellows smoked for an hour or two
Yeah.
before that. And there was a nice way out of it.
So let's
I just run right down Miles's throat.
Yeah.
Before he got a chance of getting up. And he lost no time. He just says to the cream. And away he went. down the main latrine.
Yes.
There was a few steps down off the yard. And sometime later, the bells for prayers went.
Yes.
We all marched in. Prayers.
Aye.
Prayers usually lasted about 20 minutes. No?
Yes, the night prayers, yes.
During the prayers, I was singing the poor
Miles.
Miles. During the prayers, Crane was singing the poor Miles.
Yes.
I don't know what Corell's attitude was, because he wasn't so long together as the three of us.
Yes.
But during the prayers, I looked and missed Miles at his place.
Yes.
So wasn't it Crane?
Yes.
Somebody come out. Crane said to me, asked me, I asked him to. Mailers had seen Miles. So Miles, Crane says, I'll come to the dormitory.
Yes.
He made me go to bed. There's no saying there.
Yes.
Just left only in one place, the chief.
Yes, yes.
And the college was locked.
Yes.
See? So two of us had to go to the prefect.
Yeah. And
Get leave to
explain
go down and explain to him what happened. And to get leave to go down and pick up Miles.
Yeah.
So we got there, found him there. So he says, well, Miles will come to it's bedtime. In a few minutes we'll come to take you up to bed.
Yeah.
None of me to take up.
The what?
There's none of me to take up.
Take
I
up.
was just completely
Flattened by.
He was now sitting on the seat.
Yeah. Having vomited.
Having vomited for 2 hours or more.
Good sinners.
They said, I'm all down there.
Yes.
But hurry down.
So he said, we'll bring up your clothes.
Yes.
Or something like that.
Right now, we'll let you finish your breakfast.
He
Just
was
one
cured.
top of the other there, Mrs.
Breed. Just call me
I
breed.
never forget.
He was cured of.
He was cured of smoking.
That was in the month of
October or November.
late September.
Aye.
Or early October. And
I know, with the stars,
I
yeah.
remember it was that time of the year. It can get very cold.
That wee bit of butter in your bread.
I will let you finish that wee bit of breakfast for us.
It's time we're starting.
We're up for holidays. And back.
Yes.
As I told you, stood in my holidays in Port Leith.
Yes.
I was one of the early ones back.
Your aunts were there.
Aunts were there.
I was wondering how they ever got out of Port Leith.
They didn't. They were born there.
Is that so?
No, I thought I explained it was his uncles went
Waves.
his two uncles married these two.
Down to Port Leith.
Down to Port Leith. They were in some papers or other down there.
The uncles were.
Oh,
Frank was. He was Frank. He was editor.
yes,
Democrat down here.
I see.
And the other one, there was only one uncle there, man.
I thought the
That
two.
time,
No.
of course,
Two uncles married
Frank
two.
died, and then Hugh
Yeah.
went down to the wake
Yes.
from Anamori, actually.
Yes, I know.
Lovely chap. And he met Lizzie. Lizzie was Frank's wife.
Yes.
She elderly. And Kate was a sister of
Lizzie.
but younger, much younger
Yes.
sister. And Hugh and she fell in love with each other, and he didn't go up again.
That's remarkable. What were their maiden names?
Stinson. Oh, the
No,
the
no,
women.
they aren't.
What do we see now?
Sure, I heard. O'Neill.
And you'd wonder how an O'Neill lived then, of course, when he's all over
That's
there.
right. Mm-hmm.
Well, had he been
Paddy
out?
O'Neill, the uncle, we were it.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk any more to you finish that.
You're just right. We're trying to get on the road, you know.
No, it isn't so much that. I don't want to speed the party yet, but we
No,
must.
but I want
we
you to
must-
be a longer time
No, but
in
apart
Dublin.
from that, you've told your daughter you'll be there at 12:30 about.
Yes.
We want to be there about
Yeah.
12:30. Otherwise, if they're, as I think they say, what has happened to them?
Well, I just begin to get all hot and bothered.
Forgetting that we're here sitting in comfort and I'm loath to let you go.
Yeah. Well, now, as I said this morning, we're both sorry we didn't know you even years ago, but
See, but I regret
that
it.
week has just made us feel we did know you all those years. And that
Oh,
way you said you felt.
I never got such hospitality.
Okay, well,
Well, I mean, it's not so much that you eat my breakfast or anything. I didn't Not the food at all. There's an every turn.
oh, not at all, Seamus. It's a great honour to me to be able to do it because you were my beau ideal as a boy.
No, because
Seamus was my beau ideal as a boy.
yeah, well, of course you knew him in that way.
No, I was a grown-up man at that time.
And I
Oh, he
want
was.
you, no matter when you feel like coming, to come whether you let us know or not. And there's nobody will be more welcome.
Oh, well, I
As I
like it.
told you before, Father Dan, I suppose, is our oldest. Father Dan
Yes, he would. He married.
is our oldest friend, and
That's
I'll
only a
just
spit to have.
finish it here, put it in that.
That's only a spit to have at him.
He was a boyfriend of mine, that.
Is that right?
Yes. But I loved Seamus more.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anyhow, the friendship lasted
Uh,
all our lives. We
I
were
know.
at school together.
and then the Gaelic then.
And the Gaelic, of course, I taught him his first
I know,
Irish.
and then he's such a partisan
Oh,
for
I can't be
Gaelic. now.
talking. But as I was saying to Seamus here, we go up to him on holidays,
Aye.
and he loves to have us, and he'd love to keep us if it were possible
I
at
know,
all. But it's not. I'm not saying anything about him. Only this, that he thinks all the time himself about himself.
His health's not so good, like.
Yes.
That's so definitely.
And
No.
he would, Seamus never discusses his health with him, but poor Father Dan is just absorbed in his own health
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And he thinks it does him a world of good if we go up and we try to keep him from talking about
About his
his
health.
health. But you're the opposite.
Well, I mean, there's nothing, after all, I have to thank
You're
God
healthy.
for
the health you
rude
have.
health.
Yeah.
Very
And
rude.
And there's nothing to compare with good health. They're rolling in wealth. They don't know what they're worth. And what the McGubbins. And what is it all? If you
I'm sure that's the way. There was Rockefeller, and he tried all sorts of things for health,
Yeah.
and as a result ruined his health. And he became a desiccated old ape nearly. And he still was getting, do you remember the monkey glands for rejuvenation?
Oh, yes.
He was trying all sorts of
Everything.
things, and the man couldn't eat a wee bit of bread. He couldn't eat what the tramp on the road revelled in.
Yes,
And
exactly.
he was worth millions.
Yes.
But sure, that's the way.
But he
That's
is,
the way you can't do everything.
he would give all
He would give all he had.
for one good meal.
I believe he would.
Mm.
Aye, for
I
one
would
good meal.
read
True, yes,
But
indeed.
he didn't have to give it, because it never got better.
No, he did not.
But I know Father Dan would love to meet you because you're
but
absolutely
then
everything.
But then Father Dan would give me scant attention because I couldn't talk Irish to him. Did you hear Reverend Mother and Kilkeel saying about,
Oh,
you
yes.
see, he would just disembowel me and
Yeah.
say, how can you pretend to have any nationalism when you don't know your
I'm
language?
sure you have
I do,
language.
but there again I would be timorous of
I
this
know,
scholar.
and you'd be surprised if somebody pinned you to it.
I know.
You'd be surprised at how much Irish you have.
I know, but I wouldn't want to be done it by force majeure.
I know, no.
Well, you're right for that. So
I
that's
know
the
he would,
one of the parts we have to find with him is that he insists, I'll tell you a joke about it too.
I will Daddy Darren was talking in the car.
What do we taste it?
Oh, you taste the tea, yeah. Oh, no, yeah, well, listen.
Reading his curtain. Young lad, he was 11.
You mean a lad was curtain reading? Put it
All right.
right.
Two of them were curtain.
That's very well. That's the compromise.
And they were there. They were house setting.
Yes, I know.
We were out now. The girls were out there somewhere too, and not at the house to them. They were delighted.
Yes, I know.
The band, children. Father Don came in. And Father Don having spoke, kiss, Kitty to Brady. Didn't speak it to us, man. Hardly ever.
No.
Speaks to years. And then he wanted to know where this wasn't being told. She had left him there. And Don said that he admitted he was a Kitty.
Yeah.
There wasn't nowhere to school in there, it was
I
important.
know, yeah.
And they started, no, the ordinary bits and scraps.
I know, the scholastic.
I could have written a bit of it, but couldn't talk it.
No, I know.
But Father Don insisted.
Yes.
And it turned out, left him that a miserable hour.
He would that.
See him. And then the breeding surprise, she didn't know the Mr. Seamus. The breeding surprise, he forgot the yet to be a name in some place at a certain time.
Yes.
Do you see? She didn't tell me about that. Sure forgot all about it or something. Father Don said that.
Yeah.
Turned out it was only an excuse.
He used to get out of this.
He got out.
Yes.
And about 10 minutes later the phone went.
Yes.
The breeding went and answered. Here it was Kevin.
Yes.
Was it you? Shh. See, don't do that. So he knew that he would hear her.
I know that.
So she used to. When they were sitting in that chair, it was Mammy's chair.
Yes.
Where knitting and all does be.
Yes.
Or bees. And at the side of the back there's a couple of wee cushions.
Yes.
With needles and thread hanging down.
I know, yes.
He said.
It was a hat pin, long hat pin.
Was that what it was? It was there too. No, it was a darning needle. He took notice.
Yeah.
Because it was a hefty one.
I know.
So he said, when I was sitting there tonight, I noticed a fine big darning needle.
Yeah.
And a cushion just about this straight opposite where my face was. I said,
Yeah.
not low or not high. Yes, she said, well, I want you to go into the room and take it out.
Yeah.
I was thinking that Father Don is a crazy chap.
He said, put him through an hour's agony.
Because there is a phrase, because he needed me. He
Yeah.
needed me.
Yeah.
Well, that was good.
You see, you could say
But
that he
I've
needed you.
seen now that his health is failing. He's not just so.
Not at all.
Right.
He'll be the same there. I know that tape. There's a fellow,
Yeah.
Eric Fair,
Uh-huh.
over in the west of Ireland, Eric McFinn. And he wouldn't speak English to the Australian students in college.
Oh, good grace.
He would speak Latin. I admired him in that sense. He would speak something that they could understand.
I
Surely
know.
he would come down, he would
Not
speak Latin
English.
or Italian, but never English.
I see.
That's all right, but in a way that does a great deal of harm, especially in the younger ones.
The young ones.
That's
It
what
gives them the hatred of
And
it.
they're kept there and tenterhooks, you see.
That's true, that's true.
And then told that
Aye,
the nurse at the school were indicating you were stupid.
that's true.
Well, of course, what
The
ails
kid-
him is so clever that he can speak several languages.
I know,
But inside 2 years from
Yeah.
I taught him his first Irish, he was in Malachy's College.
I know.
Inside 2 years, he was practically an authority on the language.
Well, that's good.
And he has no patience with anybody.
I know, yes. He's
that can't
a
do what
philologist.
Yeah,
A language
and
man.
even his brothers that are all married and have lovely families, they say that it was Father Dan that turned them against it, because he'd been playing with them, he'd talk no English, and then he'd scold them.
And Irish.
If they weren't any
I
better
know.
the next time
It's
he'd
not
be on
about
holidays
that,
with them,
yeah.
you see. And the fathers told me that he just put them, that when he'd come into the house they were around a mile,
I know,
rather than be in the room with
I
them.
know.
So that,
There's that about it, surely.
yeah.
But nevertheless, that's why I would meet him, but then at the same time I'd be afraid.
Oh, well, no, I don't think he would, if he knew that you didn't speak Irish, well,
I've lost it, that's what happened.
but he would. Now it's more or less that. You've lost it, I'm sure you had plenty.
You do lose a language, yeah.
You do.
Quickly enough.
You do.
The way Father told me, but you don't mind me. crack me a wee bit. Lower than our hours and walk.
Aye, no, not on deck, aye. I will see that, I remember that.
The Mick is genitive.
I
We
see.
say an animal hour hours on the
Vic, oh, I see.
It was
Glory be to you, Ablet as ever did
Aye,
it.
Breeding reminded me to tell you that.
Well, that's true now, and it'll be
What was
remembered.
reading now?
Well, I just tell you a minute. An animal hour in the name of the Father
Aye, Sue.
and of
Of
the
the song.
of the Son, Vic,
Yes,
of the Son, Spirit name.
yes,
And when you say hour, it's R-T-R,
Yes.
an hour,
Yeah.
an hour, not that,
Yeah.
an hour, but glower done hour,
aye. Or done all.
hours done walk, the David case.
I see.
See, well, that's a breeding reminded me. Away. About the sound there.
Yes,
The first time he was in our house, he was delighted that he had been introduced into our house.
yes,
He was the secretary of the Gaelic League then,
yes.
and he delighted. And not then meant interested in talking Gaelic to you, he said to me, man, these wee ones,
Uh-huh.
I do know, he says, to see wee ones in Dublin or anywhere outside Gaelic, talking Irish.
Yes,
And he had him up in his knee, turning about and breathing as a wee bit of a devil then, you see.
yes.
And she was up to something devilment. And there she played a dreadful trick on him,
Yes,
unknown to us. But that evening, when it was time for kids' bedtime, Mammy was going up, and she said, we get to say your prayers, prayer meeting, the rosary. So they decided to pray out in the landing upstairs, where it could be heard. And well, this man's name was Gillipriest O'Brien.
yes.
See, so they said, an animal hour, hours and Vic, hours Gillipriest O'Brien. See, it rhymed with
I know.
spirit name of man.
He was delighted.
The nearest should ever be the heavens to see
Very good.
and children. I kept telling people that children were praying in my name.
Well, Seamus, it's with great regret that I see it be raised from the last
That
supper.
was nice tea.
That was good stuff, tea.
It was.
But Seamus, do you want to go upstairs then?
Yeah, one
And
visit before you go.
We'll make a...
One visitor.
Yes, very good, son.
Oh, I must have been down on coach that day.
With our staffs in our
I
hands
stopped in her hand.
and our lions
No,
geared.
it stays in there. Lion geared.
Well, that was Seamus Dobbyn, Jim Dobbyn, as I knew him years ago. That was this morning, September the 27th, 1963. September the 27th, 1963. As he was leaving my house, having stayed a week here, after his breakfast this morning. I hadn't seen Jim as we knew him then since 1918. That's 45 years ago. And on that occasion, he was arrested by the RAC in connection with the pseudo-German plot that they blame Sinn Féin with taking part in. There was never any Sinn Féin plot. It was just an opportunity to gather in all the leaders and noted Sinn Féiners to have them in under lock and key. I didn't know Jim's address until I saw in a local paper where his daughter Blanya was going to get married to Sean O'Brada, and I wrote to him, and that's over 6 weeks ago, inviting him to call. He hadn't the time, and as he has got very old and very feeble, and as you have noted in listening to these talks, he is a victim of very severe bronchitis. At any rate, I went down for him on Tuesday last and brought him and his wife, Breed. She was McCampbell to her own name from Dunloy. Seamus came, of course, from Doneen. His father came from County Derry. And his father and my father were contemporaries in Cavendish Street, Belfast. And I should think were members of the old IRB. His father was born in Rocktown, County Derry. I'm consulting some notes I took in Seamus's house today. He was born born in Rocktown, County Derry in 1858. My father, of course, was born in Marfeld. About that age also, about that date he was born. My granduncle was a parish priest in Rocktown, not in 1858. He died in 1908. But there's just the possibility that if Seamus was born in Rocktown, that he might have been christened, might have been baptised by my granduncle. That I don't know. I shall ask Seamus the next time I go to Dublin. He lives in 2 Rathlin Avenue, Rathlin Road off Griffith Avenue. So I'll take the tape recorder sometime during the course of the winter, or the holiday, and record further ways. It brings in a note of veracity to have the man's story delivered by himself, no matter how hesitantly, due to his bronchial condition, no matter how hesitantly he delivers it. It's like direct evidence as opposed to hearsay evidence. So as I said, with the help of God, I'll go down and get more about this man, my boyhood hero. Henry Dobbyn, his father, he joined the ARB about 1880, along with Neil John O'Boyle of Staffordstown, County Antrim, and he went to America. Harry Dobbyn did. Harry was the name of the father, or Henry Dobbyn. He went to the Clan Gael Convention in 1894. That, I think, was something to do with the Parnell split. And he helped Sean McBride to form the Irish Brigade to go and help the Boers in South Africa in their fight against the British. Harry Dobbyn himself would have gone there, but he got pneumonia and couldn't go. The ARB Centre also formed a club in Belfast, and they called it the National Literary Club. It was really a cover for ARB activity and for recruiting for the ARB. And it was also responsible for forming the first branch of the Gaelic League in Belfast. They called this branch the Lisnavian. Amongst members of that ARB group would have been Neil John O'Boyle, Robert Johnson. That probably was the great Orange man, the independent Orange man, the Fenian sort of Orange man, Johnson of Ballykilbeg. And there was also Martin Higgins and Dan McCullough, who was the father of Dennis McCullough, and later noted in the IRA insurrection. Jimmy Scullion, I think he was an uncle of Seamus Dobbyn here. Joe Connolly, Dan O'Hagan, and others. That was the Gaelic League that was formed from that. And these both, the National Literary and the Gaelic League, met in the same premises. First of all in Carrick Hill, and later on in Tower Hill, and the Tower Hall rather, on Peter's Hill in Belfast. The Literary Society also formed the Mitchell Hurling Club. Seamus Dobbyn, or Jim Dobbyn, was a noted County Antrim hurler, and he was secretary of the County Antrim GAA in his time. Then in 1907, the younger members of the ARB formed what was called Dungannon clubs. These were sort of clubs following the convention in Dungannon of 1782, that famous convention that passed a resolution demanding freedom, more freedom for Catholics and for Presbyterians, and it was the forerunner of the 98 movement. The principal men in this were Seamus Dobbyn and Dennis McCullough, that's the son of Dan, Bulmer Hobson, I think he's still alive now over in the west of Ireland, Sean McDermott, who was executed in 1916. And these clubs were formed, as I said, by the younger member of the ARB. The ARB of the 1880 vintage and earlier, they rose in dark and evil days in their own way. but there wasn't much activity in Ireland from 1867 onwards, and these had become a sort of merged with the AOH, the forerunners of the AOH, not the Board of Ireland group. They were accustomed to listen to their vapourings for the last 50 years. The AOH, the forerunners of these people, were called ribbon men. They were sort of a secret society too, and they might have been nearer to Republican principles than certainly were the AOH since that. Well, the younger members formed these national clubs, and they in their turn were the nucleus from which was formed the IRA. This went on, of course, and then came Carson in these 1912s, bringing in of arms to Larne, which was a blessing in disguise, actually, although it may seem a far call, but Edward Carson and his Ulster Volunteer Rifles were sort of the reason why you had 19 and 16, or why you had Irishmen armed against Britain. They were the first ones that threw out the gauntlet of rebellion against Britain by threatening to kick the Queen's crown into the King's crown into the Boyne, if she passed Home Rule. Well, then the Nationalists and the Sinn Féiners followed suit and got armed. But then, overnight almost, in 1914, when England declared war on Germany, the Ulster Volunteers all got very loyal, and the Hibernian Volunteers got very loyal, and the only disloyal and dissident people were the Sinn Féiners. You see, England needed peace at home in 1914, and she herself made it, just as she had always made it if it suited her. It has suited her to make peace with most of our colonies, ever since niggardly and hesitantly she gave Ireland a species of freedom in 1921. Well, the Sinn Féin Volunteers, or Irish Volunteers they were called, their headquarters at this time were in Willowbank, up the Upper Falls Road. Of course, they had very few members. She learned there, reading the tape, that only about 90 to go to manoeuvre prior to the insurrection. The Hibernian Volunteers, they must have been 5,000 or 6,000, and as Seamus said, walking up and down the Falls Road with the old Italian rifles that got in. The Sinn Féiners always refer to these as Italian gas pipes. And it's a pretty apt description, because you want to talk about anybody being a bit of a blether, you see, there's a lot of gas in them. But these Italian rifles are there, big long guns and thick muzzles on them, about an inch diameter. But we Joe Devlin and the others sorted that there was no ammunition to fit these guns. They diluted the poor each, so I say, they've diluted so many since and before. Well, that was going on. I may as well see here in passing, which Seamus has to tell me more about it. The headquarters, of course, of the Orangemen would be Glengall-Street, as it still is. And the headquarters of the Hibs was then, maybe it is still, I don't know, it was in Berry Street. And Berry Street was furnished with a list from the police prior to and immediately after the insurrection of the names of those that they were to take off should be arrested. There was a man called McLeverty on that list, and his brother was high up in the Hib Volunteers, but he was sympathetic towards Sinn Féin. So it was from him it was learnt, this information about synonymous at the same time anyhow. But the Hibs got the list, the Unionists got the list. They were both ganging up against Sinn Féin. And that's only a digression there. O'Rahilly came in 1915. Leo O'Rahilly, he was executed later in 1916. O'Rahilly came to Belfast in 1915. And there he told Dennis McCullough, who was OC of the Sinn Féin Volunteers, that they weren't to form the proposed Guard of Honour at the foot of the falls to welcome O'Rahilly with an honour guard where he was going to deliver a lecture in St Mary's Hall. But they decided to ignore the RAC and got their rifles and their bayonets and went on down. And from that time, they were able to march freely up and down the Falls Road. Well, they'd have been afraid to do this nearly all the year of 1915. This was in the autumn. In 1916, James Connolly came to lecture them on house-to-house fighting, if it ever came about. He lectured them in Divis Street. That was in late 1915 or early in 1916. And he said, you know, this fight might come earlier than you think. So that was a sort of a sign that Connolly was in on the plans of the proposed insurrection. There's a lot of talk in years since that about whether Connolly was in the know or not. Some say, do you remember that he was kidnapped and was forced in to join them? Well, my reading of history, and this is that if it hadn't been for Connolly, there mightn't have been a shot fired in anger at all. That's why I keep the play on the stars and I give an honoured place to Connolly. His dictum was, England's difficulty is Ireland's opportunity. And I think it's a pretty good dictum for all true Republicans. And the rest of the things, as Seamus has said them there, they're all rather mixed up, but when I see him again, I must tell me more about the time that he was in lodgings in a house in Agincourt Avenue off the Ormeau Road, when he was guarding this Nazareth house and the Good Shepherd Convent, and when this big gang of orange men were waiting for him. And as he said very humorously, he was on the top of the tram when the orange men, of course, stopped the tram by just grabbing the rope that has the little trolley up at the top that touches the wire, stopped the tram, and were about to do great work. And Seamus appeared at the top of the stairs with an automatic and a 45, and that ended that particular thing. They all scattered. He doesn't ever say it boastingly. He never says anything boastingly, Seamus, in all these talks. And you can believe it implicitly, what he has told you, because Seamus is a very, very honest and sincere man, and has retired from politics since the split, and is disappointed and very saddened by the whole outcome of the whole thing, that they haven't yet achieved a 32-county republic. That was in Agincourt Avenue, where he lived there anyhow. There's a great story about that. He has also a very sad and tragic story about the shooting of the Duffin brothers. They had been told by the IRA to arrange about houses for Protestants and Orangemen who were in Catholic districts and who feared that they were going to be burnt out, as were their Catholics. Patriots in Protestant districts. They had no part in politics. In fact, they wouldn't even read Sinn Féin papers long years ago, but nevertheless that didn't save them from the RAC. And Seamus had told me it was strange. It wasn't the specials, nor it wasn't the towns, nor it wasn't the military. It was RAC who came and shot them. And it was known that it was RAC because, strange as it may seem, it was a little dog that told them. They were dying in their blood. It took them all night dying after being shot and dying in their father and mother's arms in their kitchen. And the little dog that had got into the lorry when they left the barrack, and of course came out when the police came out to do their dastardly deed, it remained behind and was lapping up the blood of these men as they died, and it was recognised as the RAC dog. That's a fine story when Dan and John Duffin were massacred and killed. There's also another great story about the death of Gaynor, when the RAC again went and shot him with silencers on their revolvers. And the old father knew, as an old ex-British Army man, what was happening. That's a fine story which I'll have to hear more about. I'll have to hear a lot more about Seamus's efforts to get more pay for the teachers. When he became a teacher out of the De La Salle Training College in Waterford, he came out with as a monitor. He received the handsome sum of £5 per annum. And then when he came out after going and receiving first division results, passing honourably, he was appointed to a school from which he was later dismissed because of his Sinn Féin activity, and he received the handsome salary of 22 and 4 pence a week. Others in the same college with him, who had failed the examination, were now by this time working, one in a brewery getting a lot more money, and one in some other occupation. The one in the brewery, I should have said, was employed by the brewer as a private tutor to his children. The other, at the moment I forget what he's doing, but they were both getting more and continued to get more in salary. History repeats itself even to this day. A young teacher coming out of college after years of study gets a lot less in his initial salary for many years than does a little uneducated policeman after 6 months training. He becomes a policeman if he likes before he's 19, and he gets a lot more yet. And the same is true down in the Free State, where a guard gets more than a teacher. In fact, neither teachers or nurses are yet paid enough. However, those are stories that'll have to wait until the holiday I get back to 2 Rathlin Road, Glasnevin, Dublin, and I shall hear more about the story of Seamus Dobbyn, a man to whom I thank God, or a man, yes, a man, well, I thank God for having met again before God calls him to the reward that is assuredly his. He's a man of peace, in spite of the fact that he was in the IRA. Today he was telling me about presiding as a judge at when the sentence of death was passed on 2 men up in County Tyrone, one a soldier and another a ruffian around there for robbing an old man of 150 sovereigns. That's a great story. It is a rather sad ending. He told me also about tough people over in County Leitrim, just how very tough they are, about how a tan, when he was sentenced to death, was asked to choose what form he would take, either by shooting, by hanging, or by drowning. And he chose drowning. The court was held on an island in the middle of a lake, and before he was tied with his arms and feet tied and a stone put him to be drowned as his wish, one of the execution party said that there was no use in wasting a good brown boot set on him. I think he was named Reynolds. At any rate, he was a prisoner in Mountjoy along with Seamus. So he removed the boots. The same man was a very tough man indeed, because he was trying to settle an old score that had been in his grandfather's time when he became a sort of a sergeant or a section leader, and he brought 4 of these IRA to this grand old man and said to him, your father and my father had a great fight. Never was resolved, but I'm going to resolve it. I brought these 4 to shoot you. It ended up the 4 that he thought was going to shoot them. When he gave the order to aim, they turned their rifles on him and said they were going to shoot him. It's a lovely story and a good story, but anything, on my reckoning of Seamus, this man of about 6 foot now he is, but very thin, and